Hello. Today I'm going to show you how to navigate the irs.gov website to help you find the answers to commonly asked questions or situations that you may have as a taxpayer. So we're going to begin today by determining if you have a filing requirement. Remember to always visit the irs.gov website frequently because things do change. So let's get started.
The first thing we're going to do is start on the irs.gov website, and we are going to click the File tab. Then we are going to come to the Who Should File portion, and this will bring us to the Who Should File a Tax Return. Now we are going to move down just a little bit on this page, and we are going to use the Determine Your Filing Status button. This is going to take us to the Interactive Tax Assistant, and this is the IRS's tool that will ask us a series of questions that will help us determine whether we should file or not. And it tells us that it will take us 12 minutes to use this tool. Tells us that after 15 minutes of inactivity, we'll be forced to start over, and it tells us not to use the back button. But I also want to bring your attention to the disclaimer. Conclusions are based on information provided by you in response to the questions you answered. Answers do not constitute written advice in response to a specific written request of the taxpayer within the meaning of Section 6404F of the Internal Revenue Code. So basically, what they're saying here is you want to answer the questions as honestly and as clearly as possible so that you get the best answer. So the first way, really quickly, is you can do this interview with the interactive tax assistant, and this will help you determine if you have to file or not. The next way is for you to look at the tables and make your determination. So we're going to go back to the file, go back to Who Should File, and this brings us back to that same page. But here it tells us most U.S. citizens and permanent residents who work in the United States need to file a tax return if they make more than a certain amount for the year. So if we click that amount, certain amount for the year, it brings us to publication 501, and we see who must file. In some cases, the amount of income you can receive before you must file a tax return has increased. Table 1 shows the filing requirements for most taxpayers. So we're going to click on Table 1, and this brings us to Table 1. Table 1 is an if and then chart. Okay, so if your filing status is single and at the end of the year you were under 65 years old, then file a tax return if your gross income was at least. Okay, so you have to find your particular situation, your filing status, and that will help you determine if you have to file a return or not. So if you were 65, if you were single, under 65, and made $12,950, then you have to file a tax return. You can stop right here. You found your situation, and this is your answer. Now, we see these asterisks. Asterisks tell us that there is more information. So let's find our matching asterisk here. So if you were born before January 2nd, 1958, you're considered to be 65 or older at the end of 2022. So this tells us how to determine our age. And then here in this portion, we see two asterisks. So let's find those and see what that means. It tells us what the meaning of gross income is. So gross income means all income you receive in the form of money, goods, property, and services that isn't exempt from tax. So we look at this, we see all of the things that are included or not included in a gross income. And then here we see under the married filing joint status, three more asterisks. So those three asterisks tell us if you didn't live with your spouse at the end of 2022, or on the date that your spouse died and your gross income was at least $5, you must file a tax return regardless of your age. Now, this page goes on to give us more information, and it tells us filing requirements for most taxpayers. You must file a tax return if your gross income for the year was at least the amount shown on the appropriate line in Table 1. But dependents, you should see Table 2 for more information. So when we click Table 2, it takes us all the way to Table 2. We see that we can also find information on the definition of a dependent if we click this highlighted section. So it tells us if your parent or someone else can claim you as a dependent, use this table to see if you must file a return. So what we do here is we determine our situation. So are we a single dependent? Were you either age 65 or older or blind? We say no or yes. We find our situation, and then it gives us the information as to whether we should file or not. Now, if you're a married dependent, you do the same thing. You find the situation that fits your particular circumstance and you determine if you should file or not. Then we can come down and gives us more information. Dependents, it tells us more information about what a dependent is, and it tells us that a dependent must also file if one of the situations described in Table 3 applies. So we'll click this and it'll take us to Table 3. These are other situations where you still must file a tax return if you are a dependent. So Table 3 tells us that you must file a tax return if any of the conditions apply. So you're a dependent or not, and you have to pay a special tax that is normally reported on Schedule 2. Then you have to file a tax return if you have to pay alternative minimum tax, recapture tax, household employment taxes. It gives you several situations when you still must file a return. Then you will see if you come down just a little bit more, it says who should file a tax return. So even if you don't have to file a tax return because nothing in Table 1, 2, or 3 applies to you, you should still file a tax return if you can get money back. So you should file if one of these applies to you. Now notice the language change. This says should file. You should file. Whereas up here, it said that you must file. So there's a big difference in should and the must, because the should means that the Internal Revenue Service owes you money. So they're saying, yes, you should file to get your money back, but it's okay if you don't. Okay? So if you had taxes withheld from your pay, let's say you made less money than what's in Table 1, nothing in Table 2 or Table 3 applied to you, but you had money withheld and you qualify for a credit or two, then you should certainly file because you would get a refund. Now, it also gives you information about Form 1099-B. So if you have a Form 1099-B, then they are telling you that you very well may have a filing requirement in some instances, and in some other instances, it's optional. Okay? So those are the two ways that you can determine whether you have a filing requirement or not. You can, one, use the interactive tax assistance and go through the interview, and the Internal Revenue Service at the end will tell you whether you have to file or not. But be careful to make sure that you answer the questions as accurately as possible, because the answers are based on the information that you provide. Or you can look at the different tables and make the determination yourself. But if after you've done the tables, you still aren't clear, then you can still use the interactive tax assistant.